You crazy bastard.
Seeing Enkrid smile, Asia almost lost her composure, but quickly regained her focus. If she didn't plan on killing him, she had to stop him here. Her younger sibling had been taken hostage, the unexpected presence of someone behind her. Layer upon layer of complex thoughts piled up only to vanish. With that smiling bastard in front of her, there were no words left to say.
You must have a reason to break through. And I have a reason to stop you.
These words escaped from her without her even realizing. Why? Why was she saying this to Enkrid? She didn't know. It was as if the atmosphere itself was urging her on. So she hardened her expression even further. She hid her emotions and let her sword speak for her. Targeting the sword's tip wasn't the only thing she was good at. She would never lose in terms of skill. There was a gap between her and Enkrid that couldn't be closed in a short time. She acknowledged that her opponent had greater strength, but the gap in skill wasn't something that could be easily bridged. Power and tactical thinking, Enkrid excelled in both. But no matter how good someone was at tactics, if they consistently lost in the finer points of technique, there was no winning. Enkrid closed his eyes again.
You'll end up dead like that.
She didn't intend to kill him, but she couldn't afford to be careless.
If you can, go ahead.
Enkrid didn't back down. For a moment, Asia found his stubbornness frustrating.
If not now, next time. You wouldn't have to fight with such risks.
Even as she spoke, Asia knew the answer. She knew too well how Enkrid would respond. She hadn't seen him in a few days, but she understood perfectly what kind of person he was.
If not today, then tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then the day after.
Enkrid spoke with his eyes closed, his sword still aimed at her.
If I ever thought about next time, I wouldn't even be standing here in front of you now.
Asia clenched her teeth. The two clashed again and again. In the end, Asia managed to pierce Enkrid's arm twice. She also left a deep wound on his thigh, large enough for a finger to sink into. In the midst of it all, Enkrid lost his grip on Silver, and with Ember he left a long slash across Asia's cheek.
If I had wanted to kill you, it would have been easier,
Asia said, catching her breath. The sun had already tilted, casting long shadows. The blade of rebellion that had started in broad daylight had now likely pierced through the entire palace. And indeed, "It's done." A voice called out from behind Asia, from within the shadow where the light didn't reach. "Get rid of that." The voice followed shortly after. Still lying on the ground, Enkrid shifted his gaze beyond Asia. There was no light. He couldn't see the figure clearly, only a silhouette, dark and thick. Despite standing in the shadows, that figure's presence felt strong and vivid. Who was this now? From the aura in Asia's demeanor, it was easy to tell. Someone ranked above her. It was the darkness caused by unlit candelabras. From beyond that shadow, a man stepped forward. As the silhouette took on color and moved closer, it felt like an unstoppable boulder was rolling toward him.
Not a knight.
His instincts and experience told him that much. After all, hadn't he faced knights before? One swing of the blade, but that was enough for him to know. This wasn't a knight. With his dull hair, a long sword hanging from his waist, and a blood-stained dagger in his hand, the man approached. Asia turned around. Even though she still had the strength to land one more strike on Enkrid, she turned without hesitation. Facing backward, she raised her sword and spoke.
Senior, let's stop here.
Enkrid could see Asia's back, and the front of the man who carried an overwhelming presence before her. The man holding the dagger tilted his head. His thick, curly brown hair swayed with the motion. "Asia, this is far enough. What are you planning to do when the master returns?" To Enkrid, Asia's words lacked any real persuasion. Even she couldn't believe what she was saying. "If you can't do it, then I will," the man said as he strode forward, and once again, Asia displayed her intimidation. A wall. The wall that had once blocked Enkrid had now shifted its direction, standing against her.
It'd be wise to stop.
Enkrid muttered. He found it hard to gauge the man's skill. Was it due to his own lack of discernment? He didn't know. It felt like looking at Ragna or Rem. "Do you think all junior knights are the same?" Asia's earlier words suddenly resonated with him. Was it because of this man that she had said it during their spar? It seemed possible. The man ignored Asia's intimidating presence. His pace didn't slow.
Asia.
Still seated, Enkrid called her name again. She didn't respond. Instead, she raised her sword and aimed it. Sword tip targeting, And once again Enkrid saw the correct counter to her technique. Rem, Ragna, Jackson, and now, for the fourth time. As soon as Asia aimed her sword, the man took a large step forward and struck her sword's blade with his dagger. Despite using sword-tip targeting, it was useless. In that brief moment, Enkrid understood exactly what the man had done. This was the fourth time he'd seen the answer, so the realization came naturally.
Just because you aim the sword doesn't mean its position won't change.
The sword remains in place. If you have enough strength to deflect it, you can break through targeting the sword's tip. If Asia had swung or blocked first, the technique would have been disrupted anyway. So, even if he approached and swung his dagger, the attack would either be diverted or blocked. However, to prevent the deflection technique from working, the strike had to be delivered in such a way that Asia couldn't counterattack, meaning there were quite a few conditions that had to be met beforehand. How was it possible now, then? The answer was clear, but the entire process wasn't visible yet.
Normally, she would deflect and strike again.
But her flow had been interrupted. To see such skill displayed with just a single dagger was proof that the man's abilities were on an entirely different level. Not all junior knights are the same. That phrase now struck deeply within him. Enkrid used his sword like a cane and stood up. He figured he could block or parry once or twice more if necessary. If he just stood by and watched Asia die, he knew it wouldn't end with just restless dreams. From the moment he stood, Enkrid no longer cared whether his sword strikes would work or not. He would do it simply because he could. "Don't be a fool." The man with the dagger spoke again. His gaze never once turned toward Enkrid. It remained focused solely on Asia. Asia retrieved her deflected sword and launched a three-pronged thrust, a thrust resembling a trident. Wasn't this technique called trident? She had said she developed it after watching the fishermen of a coastal village. The man moved his dagger up and down. Like stirring a stew with a ladle, that's how he moved his dagger. At least, that's how it appeared to Enkrid. Ta-ta-tung, the sound of 3 rapid collisions rang out. "Are you really going to do this?" The man spoke again. Instead of replying, Asia raised her sword. She shifted her stance. Her specialty wasn't just targeting the sword's tip. Enkrid knew this well too. She gathered strength in her toes and shifted her center of gravity. While she didn't neglect strengthening her muscles, there were plenty of people far stronger than her. If she hadn't thought of a way to overcome that, Asia could never have become a junior knight. "Do you really want to die?" The man's tone had no highs or lows. There was no flow to it either. It was almost like he was just stating a fact. Asia's sword flew toward him several more times. It curved, thrust, and then soared upward. It was the technique that had pierced Enkrid's arm when he failed to block it. Delicate and sharp. Just based on speed alone, it could rival Enkrid's will of the moment. It was a strike worthy of being called her ace move. But despite all those blades, the man blocked each one with casual flicks of his dagger. In the end, one of the sword's tips grazed his cheek, but it was far from a critical injury. Blood splattered. The man dropped his dagger. The short blade fell to the ground. In that moment, the man's hand grasped the hilt of the longsword at his waist. Enkrid noticed the pommel. It was shaped like a wolf. He drew the sword. It wasn't done with blinding speed or immense power. It was simply drawn and advanced. Yet, the sword the man swung rose at an odd angle. Severing the flow of Asia's thrusting sword, he intercepted it mid-strike. With a resounding thud, Asia's sword was knocked aside.
How is that even possible?
Enkrid didn't know. He had no idea. There was nothing to be learned just from watching. Asia pulled her sword back in front of her chest. Her flow had been broken. With her momentum gone, there was no way her slashing sword could reach him. As the rhythm of her strikes faltered, her steps got tangled. When her footwork stumbled, her breathing became labored. It was as if her breath was caught in her throat. Asia held her breath entirely. Ignoring all the broken flow, instead of thrusting, she swung her sword in a slash, a vertical downward slash. It wasn't as fierce as a lightning strike, but it was as fast as a ray of light. It was similar to the unpredictable strikes that Enkrid occasionally made with Ember. The man brought up his sword and pushed back. Tidding. Sparks flew as the blades clashed. For a brief moment, the two were locked in a stalemate, with their swords pressed against each other. That was the moment Enkrid threw himself into the fray. He couldn't muster the same explosive charge as when he faced Asia. but he could still deliver a proper strike. He poured all his acceleration into that single moment, rejecting the intimidation radiating from the man. He unleashed the strength of the heart of great strength and maintained his focus on a single point. He thrust Ember forward with his left hand. The extended sword mimicked the rays of the sun. The sun, once its rays are felt, cannot be avoided. There's no escaping it. It was a thrust that embodied that imagery. His technique, timing, breathing, footwork, muscle tension, and the grip on his sword were all perfectly aligned. It was a strike so perfect that there was no room for excitement. Everything just fell into place, and yet the man's sword slipped through the opening. How do you avoid sunlight? You stand in the shade. The flow was cut. Before his thrust could fully materialize, the man's sword slipped in and struck the center of Ember, disrupting the move. There was no violent force, but the change in direction threw off everything. From Enkrid's feet to the strength gathered in his body, the power of his concentrated burst, his breath, and even his footing. Enkrid knew in that instant that his strike had failed, and the result followed. The sword in the man's right hand had already slashed through Asia's heart. Asia coughed up blood. Even as her heart was pierced by the sword, she swung her rapier, but her strength had already drained away. The man didn't even bother to block it. Instead, he deflected the falling blade with his shoulder. Meanwhile, his left hand, which had been outstretched, now held a short sword, and the tip of that sword had already pierced Enkrid's chest. The bandages of Enkrid's armor held off the blade, just enough to prevent it from reaching his heart, but the sword had still sunk into his side, tearing through his other organs. The man's gaze swept over the inside of Enkrid's body, yet he still didn't speak. His expression was like someone looking at a pebble on the roadside. Was it due to the difference in skill? No, that wasn't it. It was the look of someone staring at something or someone completely irrelevant to him.
There was no way to subdue you without killing you.
He spoke, directing his words solely to Asia.
Senior.
Asia's blood-foamed lips parted. Gathering her last bit of strength, she spoke once more.
My sibling, don't worry.
The light in Asia's eyes began to fade. Despite the searing pain tearing through his insides, Enkrid's mind didn't waver. Today's repetition was a curse, so there was no blessing of growing accustomed to the pain. Thus, the agony was the same now as it had been the first time today was repeated. Even so, he couldn't tear his gaze away from Asia. He could understand why she had stood in his way. But why had she turned back here? Why had she blocked his path? The atmosphere alone revealed the answer. It was something she could have ignored. She could have walked away. That way she wouldn't have needed to risk her life. But she hadn't. Enkrid didn't need to ask the reason. He knew it without words. Just as he couldn't postpone today to tomorrow, Asia too had something she simply could not yield, what she couldn't give up.
Not turning away from her heart.
From the beginning, why had she stood here? To kill him? No, she hadn't. If she'd wanted to, she could have killed him any time. His company members had all said the same thing.
In a fight where lives are on the line, victory and defeat will be decided one way or another. But that doesn't change the fact that it's almost impossible to win right now.
Ram had said.
If we fight, we lose. No doubt about it, we lose.
Ragnar had added. While his thoughts continued, the man stood before him. His black boots came into Enkrid's view. As Enkrid raised his gaze, the man finally spoke to him.
She died because of you.
The man's tone was utterly devoid of emotion, completely indifferent. Then, the man's sword slashed at Enkrid's neck. The pain shot up from his nape to his brain, the burning sensation, the searing pain of flesh tearing, the blackout and the darkness that enveloped everything. In that instant, he found himself standing before the rippling waters of a river.
Want me to show you the easy way?
The ferryman asked. A violet lamp swayed over the rippling black river. Along with the rocking of the ferry, his body swayed from side to side. Enkrid sat at the edge of the ferry, silently keeping his mouth shut. The ferryman spoke again.
There is a very easy way.
Enkrid didn't respond. The ferryman continued.
Run away.
His lips barely moved, and his voice echoed faintly across the ferry.
Run away, and you won't have to face your death. I'll take care of it for you.
Instead of answering, Enkrid lowered his gaze diagonally. He seemed like a man filled with countless thoughts. The ferryman opened his mouth again. His lips moved, and the echo of his voice once again lingered on the ferry.
If you don't want to run, use your tongue, persuade your opponent, and prepare for what's to come. The two of you should be able to handle it.
If Asia and Enkrid joined forces, they would be able to face the one that would appear next. By repeating today, they already knew the future. Not every day would be exactly the same, but the general framework wouldn't change. Both Asia and Enkrid had exhausted their strength and were injured from fighting each other. It was the same for Enkrid. If the two of them combined forces while still maintaining their strength and avoiding injuries, they would be more than capable of handling their opponent. In fact, they could potentially even claim victory. It was a fight for survival, and if the two were on the same side, they would undoubtedly have an advantage. Of course, it wasn't a guaranteed victory.
Do you want to know exactly what the wall is?
As always, the ferryman's words lacked any emotion. He spoke only the facts, devoid of feeling. Enkrid listened to the ferryman's repeated words, but gave no answer. Was he reflecting on what had been said? The ferryman kicked the floor of the boat with his foot. The boat rocked violently. Enkrid, sitting, braced himself with his hand to regain balance. From that position he raised his head. A blank stare, a face deep in thought, a half-open mouth. That's what the ferryman saw. As if coming back into focus, Enkrid asked a question in return.
What did I just say?
The ferryman, barely containing his emotions, asked again. Enkrid blinked twice and replied.
I didn't hear you.
It was genuine. He had been too deep in thought to hear. As always, Enkrid answered with sincerity and honesty.
Go.
The ferryman's lips moved faster than his thoughts. His words didn't even enter Enkrid's head. It wasn't that he heard them and let them pass through one ear and out the other. It wasn't rebellion. He simply ignored and swallowed them. Even the ferryman had reason to be annoyed.
Huh?
Even knowing that Enkrid's confusion was genuine, his blank expression appeared irritating. Innocence can sometimes become a weapon that burdens the heart of the other.
I said go.
The ferryman neither raised his voice nor questioned further. Sending him off was enough. There was a reason for sending him.
I will watch.
Whatever he was thinking, whatever he was planning, he would find out by watching.
Oh, okay.
Enkrid, without embarrassment, nodded his head. Soon his figure blurred and disappeared from the ferry. Left alone, the ferryman silently stared into the darkness. Perhaps he would repeat the same today, and again he would face this same moment. On the ferry, in the darkness, he would meet himself. It was inevitable. The ferryman sees today repeated in advance. What will happen, will happen. What is predetermined will happen as it is. Of course, Enkrid had surprised him a few times, but that was all. There was no wall that could be overcome in just one day. The repetition of today was an endless cycle of pain and suffering. That's simply the nature of its structure. After all, that is the essence of the curse. However, for those afflicted with madness, even pain becomes a source of joy.
A madman.
The ferryman's gaze blurred, not towards the Black River, but towards Enkrid, who was trapped in the cycle of repeated life. The curse allowed him to see Enkrid's form. The ferryman watched. He repeated the same day over and over. He woke up at dawn and trained his body. Instead of persuading, he kicked the sheriff. He sent Ragna and Dunbachel, the beast woman, against the forces advancing from outside. He embarrassed his comrades by claiming he was in pain, confirming that he had indeed been stabbed when facing the assassins. Then, as he headed toward the palace, he mercilessly cut down his long-standing enemies. He slashed and killed without much dialogue.
You raped a maid, didn't you? I didn't even ask before cutting you down last time.
What?
He completely ignored the shock of his opponent. No, it wasn't that he ignored it, but rather that he had no interest in the past standing before him. Though he had almost killed the master of the curse and could have harbored a grudge, none of that was visible. Not that it didn't exist. It was just that.
He's simply fixated on something else right now.
Instead of the dumbfounded man, Enkrid looked at the maid. He asked with his eyes if it was true, and the trembling maid nodded her head. What followed was the process of cutting and killing. And so, once again, he faced the wall. A female knight with orange hair.
That's as far as you go.
She blocked his path. Enkrid raised his sword. There were no questions. Since it was bound to happen, there was no reason to ask, no. It wasn't even a matter of that kind of reasoning. For a moment, the ferryman caught a glimpse of Enkrid's heart. It was filled with anticipation.
That bastard.
He was here because he wanted to challenge the wall. He had been running towards the moment where he could cross swords with that female knight, the repetition of today. While the finer details weren't identical, it was a day much like any other. Of course, some things were different. It was what happened before reaching here, after waking up in the morning, during his training routine.
Rem, how did you do that?
It was around the time when the morning sun was directly overhead. While the sheriff babbled on, Enkrid was conversing with Rem.
This insolence, chatting when I personally have come.
One moment, wait.
Enkrid replied before asking again. The sheriff, dumbfounded, stood there with his mouth hanging open.
Targeting the sword's tip, you blocked it with the axe blade. It's called targeting with the axe blade.
Rem blinked and gave a short, straightforward explanation.
You just need to aim well.
There wasn't much more to explain, and Enkrid, deciding there wasn't more to hear, turned away. That was the small difference in today's repetition.
You scoundrel!
The ignored opponent was enraged. That was all. Afterwards, Enkrid stood before the wall named Asia, wielding his sword, trying something, but the result was the same. He was slashed, stabbed, and defeated. He lay sprawled on the ground. There was another difference compared to the previous today. The ferryman already knew this, but Enkrid did not. His gaze swept past Asia. The figure that Asia had called senior did not appear. Instead,
I'll check the rear.
Asia left, and that was the end of it. After a short time passed, the scene darkened, and today came to a close once more. The ferryman looked across the boat. Grains of sand-like fragments began to gather. Bit by bit, the particles slowly formed the shape of a person. It was Enkrid. The ferryman felt a surge of curiosity. There was no need to suppress it, so he spoke.
I have just one question.
Huh?
There stood Enkrid, still with that blank stare.
You were so deep in thought earlier that you didn't hear what was said, weren't you?
Enkrid responded readily. There was no reason to hide anything. Nothing to hide, really. He just wondered why he was being asked.
I was thinking about how to block the targeting the sword's tip technique.
Seeing the determination and fervor in his eyes, the ferryman became certain. This man, Enkrid, was focused on only one thing. He had seen nothing but the opponent with the sword in front of him. Whether it was a wall or anything else, that was all he saw, all he recognized, and he poured all his attention into it. The ferryman, speaking words that he didn't need to, but could say by his own authority, asked,
Do you see that as the wall?
He had intended to tell him that it wasn't, that he should face the real wall.
I don't know.
Those pointless words were left unsaid. So what if that's important? It's not what matters to me. That thought, too, was left unsaid. Do you have more to say? If not, I'd appreciate it if you let me get back to thinking. This, too, remained unspoken. The ferryman felt an emotion. It was bewilderment. He was flustered. Faced with such pure, unintentional honesty, the thoughts he had planned to use to toy with his opponent vanished. They mixed with the darkness, faded, and flowed away.
Do as you will.
The ferryman answered, having read his intent. Fine, go ahead and do what you want. What you're looking at isn't the real wall anyway. That was the unspoken message. Once again, Enkrid disappeared. He blurred, scattered, and was gone.
He's dense.
But this was exactly what he had hoped for, and even if he overcame this wall, it would leave a deep scar on him. The ferryman chuckled. Seeing him in torment later, there would be nothing more delightful than that. The ferryman knew that even if Enkrid overcame this wall, it would become a curse upon him.
One thing is clear.
It seemed like a good idea to mimic Rem's method, not just Rem's, but to try everyone's method at least once. Imitation is, after all, one of the quickest ways to understand the target you're mimicking.
My method comes after that.
When a path is visible, you walk it. Enkrid did just that. What exactly was the wall, and where did it end? If he had asked the ferryman, it seemed like he would have gotten an answer. The ferryman of today gave off that feeling. But that didn't matter. There was no need to know, so he didn't ask. Instead of asking, he pondered.
What are you thinking about so early in the morning?
This was the third today. During his dawn training, when he stood still in thought, Rem, who had gotten up late, asked him. Enkrid posed the key question earlier than he had during the second today.
How did you manage to block the sword tip with the axe blade?
Despite the sudden question, Rem wasn't fazed. This wasn't the first time Enkrid had done something like this. so the answer came right away.
Asia's sword was aimed at me. I aimed my axe blade at the tip of her sword, simple as that.
His explanation still felt like a chaotic mess. It was a mess, confusing and difficult. But if Enkrid was the type to give up because of that, he wouldn't have picked up a sword in the first place. Even Rem himself knew his explanation was hard to follow.
Take up your blade and try aiming.
Rem said this as he took out a long-handled axe. Although he held it lightly, it had a strange balance that made one curious about how it was wielded. It was a heavier weapon than expected. Still, just by holding it, Rem exuded a sense of weight. Enkrid drew his sword, Ember. With a ting, the blade was drawn, and he aimed it. The thin, narrow blade pointed forward. Standing there like that, it seemed like the first step in imitation was simply to aim the sword tip.
Mix intimidation and killing intent.
In a way, it was the complete opposite of Jackson's silent stab technique. The sword was meant to deceive by applying pressure on the opponent. Enkrid couldn't replicate it right away. Instead, he stood with his sword aimed. Rem struck the tip of the sword with the axe blade. More precisely, he struck the very point of the blade with the edge of the axe.
Got it?
Enkrid didn't answer, instead falling into thought. He mulled over what Rem had just done. Physical explanations were far easier to understand than verbal ones, and after some reflection, Enkrid understood. Rem had hit the point of Ember with the sharpest edge of his axe blade. The edge and point met precisely. It was beyond a feat of skill. It bordered on the miraculous. This act held a question. Could you meet the tip of the blade with the same speed and force as usual?
Ah,
A sound of realization escaped him.
Try it. You'll understand once you do.
Rem stepped back and Enkrid slowly gripped both swords. One was Ember, the other was his gladius. Meeting blades was easy, but point to point, edge to point, it was possible if you went slowly. If you slowed down, it was difficult but doable. His muscles naturally tensed. This made his movements stiff and unnatural. How could he do this smoothly? What skill was required for this?
That's it. You just need to be able to do that.
Rem, sheathing his long-handled axe at his waist, said this as if he had explained all there was to say. Enkrid didn't even nod. He was quickly drawn into his own world. Immersed. Watching him, Rem thought Enkrid was a truly fascinating person. He then looked at Andrew, raised his index finger to his lips, and gestured for silence. Without a sound, Andrew, who had been about to say something, closed his mouth. Stepping back 3 paces at Rem's gesture, Andrew spoke.
What's going on?
I'll personally oversee today's training.
it's fine, I can train on my own.
No, it's not fine. I'll carry out the captain's will.
But Captain Enkrid isn't dead.
My continental language is still a bit clumsy, that's why.
What are you even talking about? Andrew had never seen him speak Western tongue. Andrew's thoughts were ignored. Enkrid, meanwhile, heard nothing. He was completely lost in his own thoughts, deeply immersed and sinking into contemplation.
How did he achieve such delicate movements?
In his memory, Sinar swung her sword. Her footwork was light, like a butterfly. The leaf blade she wielded was just as light. Though the blade had a broad middle, it gave off a fluttering sensation. Watching the blade move as if it were dancing, it seemed as though no strength was being applied at all. But facing her in reality was a different story. It was a strike with full force. Enkrid knew this well from experience. How is that possible? To achieve such precision, one must exert strength, but to execute movements like those, one must release that very strength. He understood the method behind the movements, but questioned whether his own body could move that way.
Is it a path unknown to me?
No, he already knew. He had learned, practiced, and drilled these things into his body countless times.
There's more than one way to apply strength. Without precision, the isolation technique is meaningless.
Auden had mentioned that there were various types of muscles. There are large muscles and smaller muscles that control finer movements. Sinar had trained and refined these, achieving such precision. Enkrid needed that as well.
If you sharpen your senses, you can feel it.
There was something Jackson had mentioned countless times. Based on that, Enkrid half closed his eyes and began to swing the weapons in his hands. He drew an imaginary line in the air and swung his sword accurately toward that line. It wouldn't happen in a single attempt, but that didn't matter. Enkrid kept repeating it. It was similar to training where one draws a circle on a tree and strikes it accurately, but striking a large, drawn circle and the exercise he named targeting the sword's tip were on completely different levels of precision and finesse. To put it in terms of Naurilia's military ranking system, the difference was as vast as that between a low-ranking soldier and an elite one, and what's more, the opponent's sword would also be constantly moving.
Asia doesn't stand still.
She moved her feet bit by bit, twisted her body, and changed the direction of her sword. The answer became clear. Precision was required, akin to plucking a feather from a moving bird. To achieve that, it was necessary to train with one sword's tip meeting the other. Enkrid was fully immersed in this, diving deep into a sea of concentration. As he was doing so, voices began to reach his ears.
This is no place for a barbarian. Go suck on goat's milk.
The third training session of the day wasn't particularly different from usual, but the encounter with the sheriff, which marked the start of the day's business, took a sudden turn. When Enkrid turned his gaze, Rem was smirking as he gripped the handle of his axe.
Goat's milk.
Stopping him now seemed impossible. Enkrid thought, pausing the step he was about to take. In front of the sheriff, the captain of the Southern Gate Guard desperately tried to intervene. But whether it was out of fierce loyalty, sheer lack of thought, or overconfidence in his abilities, one of the soldiers drew his sword and swung it.
You bastard.
With that cry, the soldier aimed his sword at Rem's head. Just as the blade was about to touch his hair, Rem moved. With a sudden kick, he leaped to the side. The downward slash missed entirely, cutting through air, and Rem immediately spun his axe, changing its direction, and swung. A crisp sound echoed. Instead of a swift, cutting slash, it was a blunt blow from the back of the axe. The soldier's abdomen, struck by the flat side of the axe, briefly caved in before bouncing back. It wasn't a killing blow, but neither was it a mere pat.
Erg.
The soldier, struck in the stomach, flew through the air.
That's going to hurt.
Enkrid knew this well from experience, having been hit many times before. This wasn't a soft hammer blow. If Auden's hammer was something one could withstand, this strike could break bones or rupture organs if taken poorly. The soldier who was sent flying rolled across the ground. Then he began to vomit on the floor. Along with tears and snot, there were traces of blood in the vomit. The soldier rolled over once, and then, after more retching, his eyes rolled back. Though struck in the stomach, he passed out. Rem snorted and muttered as if to himself.
Weak.
It was a small voice, but coming from the man who had silenced the room with a single blow, it was heard loud and clear. The sheriff, in shock, gaped. Then, closing his mouth and gritting his teeth, he spoke.
This is treason.
If left unchecked, Rem would begin a massacre. Neither Ragnar nor Jackson behind him were the types to stop him. They'd fight instead. As soon as the sheriff finished speaking, Enkrid moved. He stepped forward once again to persuade them. He kicked the ground lightly, advancing while lowering his body. As he closed the distance, he struck the neck of the soldier standing in front of him with the edge of his hand. The soldier, who had been staring blankly at Rem, gripping his spear tightly at the mention of treason, suddenly froze. The veins on his hand were prominent, but so was the stiffness of his body. Not that it mattered. Even if he hadn't frozen, he wouldn't have had the skill to respond. The soldier collapsed with a groan, his body hitting the ground. Before it even landed, Enkrid spun, adding centrifugal force, and struck down the helmet of the next soldier with his palm. A loud bang resounded as his palm met the soldier's helmet. The soldier's knees buckled like the legs of a limp octopus, collapsing to the ground. His brain had been shaken, so it would be difficult for him to regain his senses anytime soon. These were the two soldiers who had blocked the path between Enkrid and the sheriff. After taking them down, Enkrid grabbed the sheriff's ankle, who was still sitting on his horse. The startled sheriff stared at Enkrid. As their eyes met, Enkrid gave a small smile and then yanked on his ankle. The sheriff's other foot was caught in the stirrup, and it broke. It was the same thing Dunbachel had demonstrated earlier. Enkrid struck the half-dangling sheriff's head with his elbow, knocking him unconscious. There was a sound of the sheriff's neck cracking, but he probably wasn't dead. All of this happened in the span of 1 or 2 breaths. Only then did the horse rear up in shock, but Enkrid had already done what he needed to do, so he took 2 steps back to avoid the horse's raised hooves. The squire, who had been watching from just behind the sheriff, was gripping his half-drawn sword, eyes wide. The captain of the city guards, standing next to him, had only placed his hand on his sword, remaining frozen in place.
Why didn't you just kill him?
Rem muttered again from the side. Enkrid glanced at the unconscious sheriff hanging from the horse and frowned slightly.
What was the sheriff's name again?
He had paid so little attention that he'd forgotten.
Pullman Vertis.
The captain of the guards said cautiously.
If you're done, it's best to leave now.
Enkrid said, and the squire who had been about to say something closed his mouth. What could anyone say in a situation like this? Everyone was silent. The soldiers had nothing more to add. The captain of the guards decided it wasn't worth risking his own legs getting broken. The silence that fell was even heavier than when Rem had sent that soldier flying.
You seem worse than me. I'll pass on the title of noble hunter to you.
Keep it for yourself.
Rem threw out a cheeky comment, and Enkrid coolly responded. The sound of galloping hooves echoed, accompanied by a frantic cry.
Help me.
The words came from deep within, full of genuine fear. Of course, Enkrid recognized the voice, and he had expected this. It had happened twice before already. It was Marcus. Without hesitation, Enkrid cut through the soldiers blocking his path and climbed up the wall. The soldiers didn't even try to stop him. In fact, they stepped aside. Rem followed him up onto the wall, and Dunbatchel leaped up alongside them.
Rem.
Enkrid spoke while looking at Marcus, who was being chased. The pursuer in an unusual outfit caught his eye.
It's the madman of immortality. I missed him before, but it looks like he's been playing around here. I'm going to go deal with him.
Go.
Enkrid replied immediately, and Rem shot off without looking back. From the top of the wall, Rem leaped with an almost inhuman hang time, landing on the roof of another building as if flying. At the same time, he drew a throwing axe and shouted,
You bastard, try running this time.
There was no option to wait and ambush him. The enemy immediately turned around, and Rem welcomed it. Catching someone running toward him was too easy. He wanted to chase him down and beat him. It was like a hunter's instinct.
You lunatic.
Hearing the madman of immortality call him crazy, Rem kept his mouth shut and kept running. Soon his feet left the roof, the wall, and landed on the ground. He dashed forward at terrifying speed, and the madman ran just as fast in retreat. Both of their figures quickly disappeared from sight. Enkrid turned his body on the wall and raised one hand, saying,
We're heading to the royal palace. Who's going to stop the Viscount Mernez's army from entering in the meantime?
He proceeded by summarizing what Squire Lawford had mentioned earlier. The big events that were bound to happen would inevitably occur. Lawford's emotional shift was similar. What did the words of the man sitting on the wall mean? What am I here for?
Ragna, Dunbatchel.
Enkrid called the two when he saw the change in Squire Lawford's gaze.
Understood.
Got it.
Both replied just as Marcus was talking about the impossible events happening in the royal palace when the group of assassins arrived.
Stab.
It was as if someone had smeared honey on the wall as they once again stood there. In the center stood a white-haired assassin with a monocle, just about to say something when Enkrid rushed in without warning. What was the point of talking? It would be meaningless. He was ahead in timing, and the difference in skill was clear. He leaped onto the wall and slashed his sword down from above. For a brief moment, a short thought crossed his mind as he swung his sword down.
Is my sword more precise than before?
Who knows? He couldn't feel any changes in his body just yet. From the assassin's perspective, something suddenly flew at him, and something heavy was coming down. The assassin had no time to react and offered his head to the blade. The sword split the assassin's head vertically. The severed head burst open sideways, and brain matter and blood trickled down from where the sword had passed. After killing one, Enkrid quickly jumped back. 3 daggers and 5 darts flew toward where he had been standing, burying themselves in the wall. As if he had anticipated it, Enkrid dodged and spoke.
Just to be clear, I've already been stabbed. So the job is done. It hurt. Yes, that's what you ordered, right? I've got a scar here too.
He lifted his left arm as he spoke. Of course, his arm was well protected by armor, so no scar was visible.
That crazy bastard.
One of the other assassins muttered.
Lacking creativity in your insults.
Enkrid retorted nonchalantly. He had a natural gift for getting under people's skin without needing to learn how.
You.
The assassin was too busy getting angry. In truth, assassins are specialists in sneaky stabbing. They usually kill by slashing and stabbing when things go wrong. How often do they get provoked to the point of anger? It was rare for them to face such taunting. So this approach worked perfectly. Naturally, Enkrid had captured the full attention of the assassins. With just one swing of his sword and a couple of words, he had accomplished a lot. By then, Jackson had already disappeared. Without needing to be told, he knew what he needed to do. The white-haired assassin with the monocle ground his teeth and shouted.
The information was leaked. Everyone, respond.
Enkrid's reaction had been too fast. The assassin thought there was no way Enkrid could have moved so quickly unless he had prior knowledge. And what was with the comment afterward? Stabbed? Where? After a brief thought, the assassin realized what Enkrid meant. He was talking about the contract. They were ordered to kill him, but Enkrid was claiming he was only stabbed. And what was with his comment about creativity and insults? It was all nonsense. It was clear from the start that he had come to fight. The assassin was one of the leaders of the Assassin's Guild, and he knew how to fight. Of course, all this happened because Enkrid had lived through this day before, but the assassin couldn't possibly know that. The assassins began moving in familiar patterns. Enkrid realized that they had been trained for years. No matter the situation, they began their attacks in similar ways. Those who would throw, threw. Those who would retreat, retreated. Those who used poison, used poison. During this, Jackson's movements had been slightly different each time over the past 3 days. At first, he had rampaged with a longsword, but now he was running along the wall, wielding stilettos in both hands. Blood was splattering from the sharp blades. 4 assassins had already been killed by his stabs. Enkrid found it fascinating. The assassins reacted the same way each time, but why was Jackson's approach different each time?
Is he matching his movements to mine?
It was just a feeling, but Enkrid thought it was likely. Attack from that side. This time the shout didn't come from the white-haired assassin but from another. The order was directed at Jackson. It was clear how much of a threat Jackson was. Watching this, Enkrid discreetly stepped back and called out to Odd Eyes.
Give me a lift.
As Enkrid ran outside the mansion, Odd Eyes joined him by his side. Marcus was already at the mansion entrance, mounted on horseback. He had motioned for Marcus not to dismount, so Marcus remained on his horse and moved alongside him. It was the 3rd time living through today. Enkrid judged that this was a better approach than hiding him away somewhere. Most of his decisions remained similar to the first time through, but nothing could ever be perfect. Even though he always strived to live each repeated day making the best possible decisions, giving it his all, he knew the truth.
Nothing can be perfect.
He accepted that, and that was enough.
Where will you hide? I'll manage myself. Our lord has been detained in the royal palace. The knights seem to have mobilized.
Yeah, I know.
What?
Whatever Marcus said next was drowned out by the increasing speed of the horse's hooves. Marcus quickly veered off to the side. He really did seem intent on hiding by himself. During a brief moment of respite, Marcus tore his shirt and tightly wrapped the wound on his arm. It wasn't a serious injury that required immediate attention. Enkrid continued running along the outer road toward the royal palace, jumping over obstacles as he went.
Wow.
He ran past a startled soldier, catching a glimpse of his shocked face. Timing his movements with Odd Eyes coming to a halt, Enkrid leaped off to the side, almost flying through the air. Even Odd Eyes seemed surprised, as if asking whether such feats were even possible.
Thanks.
Enkrid gave a quick acknowledgement and ran straight toward the royal palace, striding in with determined steps. On his way in, an old enemy seemed to appear to greet him.
You.
Before he could even finish speaking, Enkrid rushed forward in an instant, decapitating him with silver. The head flew and struck the pristine white wall that lined the royal garden. With a splatter, blood decorated the wall. Before the instructor known for his foul mouth and his group could react, Enkrid had already dashed through them. Like a lone wolf, he stabbed and slashed through the group that had behaved like a pack of dogs, killing them swiftly. After exchanging a few words with a maid, Enkrid ran further in, only to be met by a wall of orange hair.
All right, this is as far as you go. Let's begin.
Enkrid spoke as he ran, and before Asia could say anything, he pointed his sword at her. It was targeting the sword's tip. Enkrid aimed at that tip and swung his sword down. The start and end of the fight weren't too different from before. He still wasn't at a level where he could surpass Asia. The only thing that had changed was that the man he had seen on the first day never appeared again. Instead, once Asia defeated Enkrid, she immediately turned around.
I have something to check.
She left, and darkness followed. She never returned. After that, everything repeated, over and over again. Enkrid continued doing the same thing, again and again.
Andrew, yeah, give it a try.
It was after 19 days had passed. Enkrid instructed Andrew to thrust his sword at him. He needed someone's help now. Enkrid did exactly that. He began training by blocking the tip of Andrew's sword with his own.
This is such a crude training method.
By the 36th time he heard Andrew's remarks of admiration, Enkrid finally matched the tip of his sword against his opponent's nose. It wasn't just holding still, it was done while moving at a moderate speed. Naturally, it wasn't easy, it was difficult, but because it was so hard, the thrill of success coursed through his entire body. Of course, that thrill and exhilaration were short-lived. In order to truly master it, he'd have to repeat this same drill countless times. Yet, the fact that it was enjoyable couldn't be denied. A light, unfamiliar sound was heard.
But is this actually fun?
Andrew asked. Even while concentrating throughout the swordplay, energy surged from his entire body. It was fun, exciting, and exhilarating. Just like a child playing with a toy all day long, he seemed to actually be doing so. It appeared as if he wielded the sword with pure joy as his weapon. That was Andrew's impression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enkrid responded, emphasizing the words.
Why, though?
Andrew couldn't understand it, but to Enkrid it was a natural thing, just as it always had been.
But I will keep moving forward.
Yeah, extremely this.
Huh?
Thud, 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 thud. The tips of their swords clashed repeatedly. After hearing Andrew's admiration more than 40 times, Enkrid, now drenched in sweat, nodded.
That's enough.
Then he called for Rem.
Rem, swing your axe.
He changed opponents. Rem snorted, smiling, and swung his axe without hesitation. There could be no allowance for even the slightest error. He couldn't afford to leave any gaps for an intricate attack. Without such precision, there was no way he could perfectly deflect Rem's axe. He had to deflect it completely, not just halfway. That was the beginning. After mastering the sword tip-clashing exercise, the next training was deflecting Rem's axe. The goal was not just to deflect, but to make the sword tip and the axe blade meet perfectly.
Is he fearless or just thoughtless? Get over here and kneel.
Whenever he got deeply into training, the sheriff would inevitably arrive. Every time he saw Enkrid engrossed in training, he'd react similarly, and Enkrid would thoughtlessly reply.
Oh, you're here.
By now, it was a welcome sight. After repeated training and drills, the time had come for real combat training. With a wave of his hand built up through their shared experiences, the sheriff's face flushed red, snorting with anger. He thought Enkrid was mocking him. Of course, he was right.
You son of a bee.
Before the sheriff could finish his words, Enkrid silenced him with a persuasive kick. He then had Dunbachel demonstrate the difference in strength to the sheriff's squad. Squire Lawford was pitted against Ragna and Dunbachel, while Rem was sent to rescue Marcus, and Jackson faced the assassins.
Thrust.
Before the words were even out, Jackson responded by leaping to the side, silently and stealthily. Using a magical artifact in his possession, Jackson eliminated both sound and presence, disappearing from sight. Enkrid drew attention first, and then Jackson followed, pulling the attention of the group of assassins and throwing them into confusion. The assassin group, perceiving Jackson as a greater threat, began targeting only him. After watching this scene several times, it seemed as if they had intended to kill Jackson from the start. Why? The question suddenly crossed his mind. Several thoughts flashed through his head. He let them all pass by. His instincts brought up suspicions, but now wasn't the time to investigate. He rode the odd-eyed steed and met Asia, repeating the day once more. It didn't take as long as he expected to perfectly deflect Rem's strike. Not when he wasn't swinging for real. It only took 96 attempts. Now that the concept of the basics had been properly established, it became possible. The training he'd done in handling various weapons also proved helpful. The more experience he gained, the more insights he had into his original weapon. The sword, of course. Rem always snorted when he saw this.
That's something that just comes naturally, but your body's quite something.
In his words, as your level rises, there are things that naturally become second nature. But for him, nothing comes naturally like that. He had once said it was like stacking stones one by hand, each stone carefully balanced to avoid collapse. It was a perfect analogy. Whether it was the basics or anything else, if he didn't fully master each part, it wouldn't sink into his body. What is the most important thing for those who make up for a lack of talent with effort? Time, and thanks to the curse, he had received plenty of it.
What's even more amazing is that it's like watching a person change overnight.
Even to Rem, this was the first time seeing such a person. Clearly, Enkrid lacked talent. He had reached his limit. He had arrived at the edge of a cliff, yet he kept walking into the air. Watching him walk, a path appeared beneath his feet. Enkrid, who had deflected Rem's axe, had gone beyond his previous limits and improved. His rate of growth was extraordinary. No genius changes overnight. There are always signs or hints.
Or maybe there were already signs.
Rem scratched his head as he thought about it. There was already a prepared body, technique, and the time spent training. So, was Enkrid someone who had stacked and stacked until his talent exploded in a single day?
That doesn't make sense.
He'd seen so many nonsensical things that he tried to just let it go, but it never ceased to amaze him. Not that there was anything to question.
Jackson.
This was after Enkrid had also managed to handle Rem's axe fairly well. Enkrid used Jackson. Jackson was the only one who could display precision on the level of Sinar's sword. Not that Rem and Ragna lacked those qualities. They also used precise and refined sword techniques. When one's skill level rises, they naturally become proficient at many things. But everyone has their strengths. Jackson's precision was on par with that of a fairy. That was one of his strengths. Shake it. Enkrid continued training, allowing the sword tips to shake and clash repeatedly. Sometimes he'd face off against Asia in a fight.
If you don't have a lover waiting for you, why not go later?
He tried to dissuade her, but Asia didn't listen.
I have something to confirm.
That's all she would say before turning away, then darkness. Once again, the day repeated itself.
Damn, what the hell did you do?
Rem asked, startled by the new day. Seeing this, Enkrid called Jackson, who was gleaming with excitement, and resumed training. With the endless repetition of today and the many overlapping events, Enkrid used them as an anchor to keep count. Sometimes the ferryman appeared, smiling. It was a smile filled with anticipation, or at least that's how it seemed to Enkrid. Chuckle, chuckle. The laughter flowed down the black river, swaying along with the lamplight. Whether someone was mocking him didn't bother him. In fact, it didn't matter whether it was the ferryman or anyone else. From a young age, he had swung his sword, run, tumbled, fought, and risen again amidst countless jeers. Mockery was something he was used to. Mental attacks of that kind had no effect on Enkrid, and so he awoke from his sleep and repeated today once more, training and drilling. It was around the time when the tip of Jackson's sword met his own. More specifically, when he had just about blocked Asia's sword targeting his own.
How?
Asia was more than a little surprised.
Just kept doing it.
This was a moment that couldn't simply be explained away as luck. The thrill that shot through his entire body naturally brought a smile to his face. Seeing this, Asia pulled her sword back and spoke.
Your face is a weapon too, huh?
Asia took a step back and raised her sword again.
Do it again.
He did just that, crossing swords with her.
Trying to be like Rem? It's sloppy.
She commented bluntly, and then began to shake the tip of her sword. What was this? This was a technique he hadn't seen during their previous sparring sessions. The tip of her sword wavered, and soon multiple points appeared before his eyes. If he wanted to block like Rem, he'd have to parry each point individually. With enough repetition and training, that too would become second nature. But that wasn't the path he wanted to walk. He stuck to his original resolve.
I need to build my own path.
He had already gained all he could by mimicking Rem's technique.
You think I look easy because you've managed to break all my techniques?
Asia spoke again. Her tone didn't carry resentment. While Enkrid's ability to parry by matching the sword tips was impressive, he had just been copying what Rem had shown him. She had expected this level of talent to have been hidden within him all along. Otherwise, how could he have honed both his swordsmanship and physical techniques to this level? After all, she herself was a member of the Knights. ranked above a junior knight. She had faced countless challenges like this before. It was nothing new to her.
If you think this is where you're stuck, you need to change that mindset.
As she spoke, she lowered her sword tip. The points disappeared, all the movements that had been shaking. Instead, she began bouncing lightly on her feet, tapping the ground to create a rhythm. Her orange hair swayed in time with the rhythm. Naturally, her weapon wasn't just about precision swordplay.
Let's keep going,
She said in that state.
Of course.
Enkrid nodded. After the brief exchange, silver, ember, and the dwarf's gift sliced through the air, dancing. On the opposite side, Asia's rapier flashed blue as it pierced, slashed, struck, and sometimes curved into attacks. It was still difficult to block or suppress everything without sustaining any injuries, but now at least he could keep up all day. However, there was a definite time limit. On this day, for some reason, it didn't end at midnight, but when the sun suddenly set, then today would simply repeat. It was something he knew from experience. Therefore, he had to do his best within the time given.
Huff huff. Why did your skills suddenly improve?
Asia asked, panting, and Enkrid smiled as he answered.
It's fun.
You madman.
Asia laughed too, seeing him respond like that. She also felt exhilarated, despite swinging her sword and risking her life in a situation that shouldn't have felt that way.
See you again.
The sun set, the day repeated. He hit a wall. It was a day that couldn't be overcome. As Enkrid opened his eyes again, he decided this time to mimic Jackson's method.
Next.
He muttered to himself, as if out of habit, to strengthen his resolve.
What's next?
Stretching his body with the isolation technique, Andrew asked from beside him.
There's something.
Enkrid gave a vague answer and began to mimic Jackson's method. The way to break Jackson's sword-tip targeting was to strike before it started. And what did he need for that?
Prediction. You have to sense the opponent's reaction just before it begins.
How?
Feel the flutter of their eyelashes, the tension of the muscles hidden beneath their clothes.
Easy to say, really.
Why are you looking at me like that?
No reason.
Your eyes looked a bit like a barbarian just now.
What are you talking about? You stray cat, that's offensive.
Rem chimed in.
They were like the eyes of a rotten fish mixed with bad eggs. Not pleasant at all.
Jackson ignored the conversation and spoke to Enkrid as he faced a throwing axe. With a swoosh, the axe flew toward him. Jackson angled his long sword against it and twisted, applying just the right amount of force and timing. The axe, which had appeared as a spinning disc, bounced off vertically with a loud thud. The sound followed, a swift exchange of offense and defense. His blocking move was combined with technique. It was the precise and fluid sword technique. After blocking the axe, Jackson spoke.
A moment ago, the barbarian's snort came out faster than usual.
Was he trying to give an example? Did he predict it based on the snort? It must have been an instinct built from countless experiences. Enkrid watched their sparring without much interest. Jackson was always a step ahead. Just like he said, beyond just evasion, he had developed a sense of attack, an instinct that adjusted to match his opponent's technique. Perhaps you could call it a sense of prediction. As he began this new training and learned more,
This is really so much fun.
once again he muttered to himself. Seeing this, the ferryman sincerely wanted to shake his head. This madman had no sense of boredom, no suffering, no despair. It was as if he was trapped in a closed space, endlessly swinging his sword and enjoying it. Even though there was no one who shared his memories in this repeating day, it didn't matter. He didn't care. In reality, Enkrid was fine because there was something he shared everything with, himself. The process of swinging his sword, the path he was on, his growing skills, and all the changes happening were his measure of joy. Sharing this day with his sword made it all okay. So, after imitating Jackson's techniques, he even touched on Ragna's. Then, when he fought without using the targeting the sword's tip technique, but something else entirely, it happened. Enkrid's sword grazed Asia's throat. More precisely, after blocking with silver, he drew his gladius and made an unpredictable horizontal slash. With a quick sound, a piece of her skin was sliced, and droplets of blood spurted out. The whole scene unfolded in slow motion. He had an opportunity. He knew it. He could push forward from here, but even though his mind knew it, his heart didn't command him to act.
I made contact.
But he didn't kill her. If he had pressed the attack, he would likely have been struck somewhere himself. but it was a moment where he could have killed her. If he were lucky, it might only leave a hole in his shoulder. If he were unlucky, it could be a fatal wound. Either way, it was clear that he had the chance to kill, but Enkrid stopped. The same opportunity didn't come again. Their swords clashed, and they switched positions. Asia now stood where Enkrid had been, and Enkrid where she had stood. Blood dripped down her arm in a steady stream.
When you get a chance, you have to take it.
Asia spoke. It was something they both knew. Enkrid didn't respond. Asia sheathed her sword.
Let's stop here. Go check on something behind me, and then I'll let you go. I'm sure whatever reason you came here will have no meaning anyway.
Enkrid didn't answer again. Asia brushed past him without a guard, her sword still sheathed. After she left, time flowed as he sat there silently. Shortly after, the day ended. It was the same as dozens of other days that had ended in the same way. As darkness fell and he opened his eyes, he saw the purple glow of a lamp. The ferryman. The ferryman on the boat opened his mouth.
That's the wall.
It was unusually kind of him to say. Perhaps it was appropriate.
Didn't I tell you it wouldn't be fun?
The ferryman continued, but for Enkrid it wasn't exactly the most enjoyable experience. The ferryman continued speaking.
You have to kill her with your own hands for it to end.
This meant that this cycle would only end if Asia was killed.
Do I really have to?
Enkrid asked without thinking.
I gave you a clue from the beginning.
At the ferryman's words, Enkrid closed his eyes and thought for a moment.
What happened to Asia beyond the corridor?
She must have died, probably. It was just a guess, but it felt almost like a certainty. So was Asia's death the trigger that caused today to repeat? Enkrid recalled the death of Asia that he had seen on the first of these repeating days.
That's correct.
The ferryman replied as if reading his thoughts. Enkrid instinctively felt that there wasn't a single lie in what the ferryman had just said. From the beginning, the ferryman had never deceived him with lies. Everything he said had been true. It's just that Enkrid hadn't taken it literally.
Kill her, then you will surpass the wall.
With those words, his vision began to blur. Through the hazy view, the ferryman's voice echoed once more.
Enjoy this as well.
There was a sense of anticipation in the words. Enkrid opened his eyes. It was a new day.
Do I have to kill her?
The ferryman had said that was the wall, and that surpassing it required killing her. It was the early dawn, just before sunrise. Enkrid moved as he usually did. He went outside and began practicing the isolation technique, falling into thought as he moved. Physical movement often helps the mind think more clearly.
Do I have to kill her?
The same question lingered in his heart. Enkrid couldn't focus. He knew it, but there was nothing he could do about it.
Why?
He questioned himself. The answer seemed within reach, yet eluded him. The time spent agonizing grew longer. At some point, Andrew came over and said something, but Enkrid responded vaguely, continuing his monotonous movements. He began today clouded by distracting thoughts.
You scoundrel.
He met the sheriff, and as if repeating countless previous days, relived everything he had done before.
If I kill her, I'll surpass it.
The answer was clear. If he could surpass it, that was enough. How many people had already died by his hands? In the era of war, murder could not even be called a crime. Asia stood in his way. She was a knight, a junior knight at that. She knew that facing someone might mean death. She must have accepted that possibility, so she could be killed.
Kill her, then you will surpass it.
A hallucination. The ferryman's voice echoed in his ears, but when he faced Asia, things didn't go as before. There were too many distracting thoughts. He couldn't overwhelm her with skill alone.
You've lost your edge. If you don't want to fight, go back.
As a junior knight, she could use a shard of will. That was tied to one's strength of resolve. A mind full of turmoil leads to a sword that's equally erratic. Asia had hit the nail on the head.
That's not happening.
He responded to her remark and drew his sword again. He fought using technique, swinging reflexively. Another day passed like that. He couldn't kill Asia, but Asia couldn't kill Enkrid either. It felt like a meaningless day, a day wasted, filled with the guilt of letting time slip away. But just once, he allowed himself to drift in the familiarity of it all, instead of struggling or resisting. And then, it felt like someone hit him in the back of the head. No, someone actually did hit him.
I think I need an explanation for what just happened.
Enkrid asked. still in the same position as when he was struck on the back of the head, his neck bent forward awkwardly.
From what I can see, it's because there was a curse embedded in your mind. A curse like that can only be cured by my hand, which is both medicine and divine.
Rem said as he raised his palm to the sky. Sunlight gleamed on his hand.
Bless the divinity contained in this hand of mine.
It was the sight of a crazy man doing something crazy.
Why is he even alive?
Jackson unusually muttered under his breath.
If you want to die, come at me.
Ragnar casually let it be known that he was more than willing to kill Rem.
Shut up, you clueless fools.
Rem shot back. Watching this, a thought crossed Enkrid's mind. Maybe he should just kill this bastard. It might have been easier on his conscience if he was told to kill Rem instead of Asia. Of course, he's not the kind of guy who would die just because you wanted him to. Even if someone told Enkrid to kill Rem, he probably wouldn't actually do it. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck in his mind. The shock felt like it tore through his skull and scrambled his brain.
A curse?
That was the only thing he managed to say.
Don't think unnecessary thoughts.
Rem tapped his own head with his finger as he spoke.
Why make things complicated?
Ah.
A sigh escaped Enkrid's lips. Why did he feel the guilt of wasting a day? Why hadn't he been able to make the most of today? It felt as though his arms and legs were bound in chains. Those chains had originated from the ferryman's words.
Kill her, and you will surpass it.
The reason he hadn't been able to move forward was simple. He didn't like that idea. His heart hadn't been in it. He knew he needed to kill her, but he didn't want to. He didn't feel like doing it, so his heart hadn't moved. This wall wouldn't be overcome by killing Asia. He decided that for himself. With that decision, Enkrid opened his mouth, filled with genuine resolve.
No.
Just 2 simple words. They cut to the point, but they were filled with sincerity. Words have power when they come from someone who has lived through their meaning. The days Enkrid had experienced. Today everything added weight to his words. That gave them resonance, and resonate they did. The words spoken from a unified heart rippled beyond his own chest and into the hearts of those around him. Rem scratched his head with the same fingers he had been tapping earlier and said,
Well then, carry on.
When someone so adamantly says no, how could you stop them? There's no such thing as a perfect person. Even a leader like Enkrid would have moments like this, where they wrestle with difficult decisions.
No.
Enkrid spoke again, this time smiling.
Okay, I get it.
No.
He smiled widely, making eye contact as he said it.
Oh, for God's sake, I said I get it.
No.
All right, I was wrong. Just hit me already.
Rem offered the back of his head. Enkrid looked at it and said,
No.
Shit.
Then he laughed. It wasn't directed at him. It didn't matter. Whether today repeated or not, what did Rem's misunderstanding even matter? He'd forget about it soon enough once again. Today repeated. Enkrid endured it just like before. There was another chance to kill Asia, but he let it pass. The ferryman appeared again in his dream and spoke.
I guess that was meant for me.
Nod. Enkrid nodded.
Then you'll remain trapped in today. Do you really think that's better? You're willing to abandon your dreams just to save someone because of a mere connection.
The ferryman's words were like a sharp blade. It was a strike aimed at his heart. But Enkrid's heart was protected by the heart armor of the frog, blocking the ferryman's blade.
I'll perfectly subdue her and move on.
What?
Enkrid's dream was to be a knight, but not just any knight, the chivalric ideal of the old era. What he knew about knighthood came from poems and songs. That was his standard, his belief, his oath to protect the weak and his comrades. Didn't he say as much to the Marquis?
I've come to reduce monsters and slay beasts. I've come to protect those who know how to value people. I've come to punish those who oppress others with force. I want to protect the dreams of the weak and those who still hold on to hope.
Asia had her own circumstances. He could vaguely sense that through the countless repetitions of today.
I'll subdue her without killing her.
You think that's possible?
Why wouldn't it be? Enkrid answered with his eyes, and the ferryman said no more. He closed his eyes and opened them again. It was the same day, but there was a change in his mindset. It would be more accurate to say he now had a clear goal. He wasn't going to kill Asia. He was going to subdue her. That's what he decided. He didn't want to kill her. Crazy bastard. The ferryman's voice echoed in his head again, but this time he ignored it. So another day began, starting with the sheriff and ending with Asia. Another 240 days passed like that.
What?
Asia reacted to something Enkrid had just said.
I'm asking why. Why do you keep standing in my way?
It was something he'd sensed from the beginning. Did Asia even want to be here?
Half and half.
If she had truly turned to the enemy, she could just let him fall and watch him die. But she didn't. She continued to stand in his way. She claimed he didn't need to die, but she was risking her life for it. She had even mentioned her younger sibling before she nearly died. He remembered that, and above all, there was something he sensed when they crossed swords. Through the repeated days, he had seen, heard, and judged things. Enkrid's mind worked through everything. It was a silent process of untangling and organizing his thoughts. Just as Kreis often said, Enkrid had a natural instinct and sense for these things.
Is your sibling being held hostage?
Asia's hand flinched. She was a junior knight, and after facing her many times, he knew. She wasn't someone who would be shaken by a few words or taunts, yet her reaction was unmistakable. It seemed her sibling meant a lot to her. As soon as the words left his mouth, a murderous aura seeped out of Asia. It was far more intense than anything she'd shown before. Her presence alone created an oppressive force. Naturally, Enkrid's will of refusal inside him responded, pushing back the pressure. He squared his shoulders, meeting her gaze head-on. Asia's aura weakened slightly. No, her aura was the same, but the murderous intent within it faded. It was replaced by the fighting spirit of someone who wanted to battle, not kill.
Yeah, I figured you wouldn't be involved with people like that. How did you know?
Just intuition.
You've got a sharp mind, I'll give you that.
Asia remembered mentioning her sibling while staying at Andrew's estate. It must have been from that conversation that Enkrid made his deduction. Of course, repeating today had given him an advantage, but Asia couldn't have known that.
That's part of it.
Asia continued speaking. Enkrid didn't think she was here just because of one hostage. She must have had other options. But why was she standing in his way like this?
What about the other half?
Asia hesitated for a moment, then let out a breath and finally spoke.
If you don't want to die, turn back. That's all I have to say.
Her voice was forced, rigid, as if she was trying to suppress the liveliness behind her words.
Why? Because if I leave, you'll just die.
It was another guess, but again he was right.
Did you learn mind reading or something? That would be troublesome.
No, nothing like that.
He only knew because he had relived this day over and over. There was someone behind Asia, someone who would finish things. As for their strength, probably around Rem or Ragna's level. If they weren't, no matter how tired she was, Asia wouldn't be caught so easily. That was likely the reason she kept dying. Enkrid's first task was to reach that person. He adjusted his grip on his sword, and seeing this, Asia's eyes steadied. She spoke again.
Just turn back. I'm half asking as a favor.
Another half. Enkrid thought about it and stared directly into her eyes, asking,
The other half.
A threat.
Enkrid nodded.
I respect your judgment, Junior Knight Asia.
He meant it. As always, his words carried genuine sincerity. Because he respected her decision so deeply, truly respected it, Enkrid decided to surpass it.
Even if I let you go, you'll still die.
Asia repeated herself, sensing the change in his resolve, but Enkrid didn't listen. Instead, steadied his breathing and adjusted his sword belt. He shifted his stance and mentally catalogued everything in his surroundings. He'd repeated this day over 300 times. He remembered most things just by glancing at them. The hanging decorative swords, the windows, the vases, everything.
You can't stop me.
Enkrid declared, ready in his stance. Even if not today, in some other day, he would surpass her. That was why he said she couldn't stop him. In Asia's memory, Enkrid had never even been able to surpass her sword's tip.
Prove it.
A smile unknowingly spread across her face. That confidence, that unyielding stance, it was something to admire. Becoming a junior knight in the order meant living with that kind of fierce determination. Above all, this man, Enkrid, had a passion that stirred everyone around him. Naturally, that had an effect on Asia as well. She genuinely wanted this man not to die here, and that was why she wouldn't let him pass, nor would she kill him. She extended her sword forward, aiming it at him. It was the targeting the sword's tip stance. If he couldn't get past this, the fight wouldn't even begin. Unintentionally, she felt a sense of anticipation. Maybe, just maybe, he would surpass her skill.
Am I thinking that he might?
Was it because his presence radiated such overwhelming confidence? He'd shown this steady determination throughout their sparring, so why was it catching her off guard now? She didn't know. It was just a feeling, an instinct, the sense of a junior knight. More focused than ever, she gathered her will. She even abandoned the pressure she usually exerted and focused everything on the targeting the sword's tip stance.